Starting up. All right, we are live. We'll wait for people to filter in. Can you believe it, Carl? We're back. How about that?
It
We're
is
back.
nice. It is nice to be back with you, Evan. It's been a long wait to get back into the playoffs for the Bruins, and to have the opportunity to talk to you at 11 o'clock at night is awesome.
It is. It is, especially after a game like that. Bruins win 5-1. Never seemed that close, ever. I mean, to me, we'll kind of wait for people to trickle in, but I mean, my opening thought, and it's only game one. I think we need to preface it with it was only game one. Doesn't mean that the series is over by any means, because it's not. It's one game. But it just was never that close, in my opinion. I mean, what did you think?
Yeah, I think we learned our lesson after last year, right? Florida,
Yes.
the first game, Bruins come out with the win. I think the initial thought is that the Bruins played a really structured game. The game plan for them was to keep Toronto in front of them, force them to come 200 feet, don't allow them opportunities in transition, and they did a great job of limiting those opportunities. Although, I mean, Toronto clearly outshot them.
Mm-hmm.
I think the concern there is, when does Mitch Marner decide to get involved in this series? For Toronto, he was a no-show. And if I'm a Bruins fan, that's the one thing that scares me, is when he decides to play, I think that the series will change a little bit.
It will. It was interesting. There was a sequence. I think it might have been the second period or the first when Marner was killing a penalty, and he had Shattenkirk dead. I mean, he could have easily taken him one-on-one and just kind of dumped it in, and that was kind of an example of take the ice. Because I agree with you, and it's interesting because it seemed like tonight at least with line matchups, Zaka's line was going up against Tavares, Nyes, and Marner the most. But again, to me, and now people are starting to trickle in. The story of this game to me is the goaltending, and we talked about this. You and I have talked about this off the air. Swayman and Olmark versus Samsonov, and I think you saw it tonight. Of Swayman clearly outplayed Ilya Samsonov by a lot. I mean, Swayman finishes with 35 saves. Samsonov let in some shots from out high. To me, that was the main difference tonight.
So I think two things. I think number one, if you're consistently relying on Jeremy Swayman or Linus Olmark, that is a difficult way to win this series. You're looking at the best goal scorer in the National Hockey League in Austin Matthews. If you're going to give him time and space and enough opportunities to get shots, eventually those are going to go in. Certainly they didn't go in tonight, and Swayman played well, but that's, like, as you saw down the stretch for the Bruins, relying on those two goalies to be your best player on a consistent basis is not a recipe for success in the playoffs. And two, I think what the Bruins did a really nice job of, and some of those longer shots, like you think about DeBrusk's power play goal coming off that half wall, you have screens in front of Samsonov and the Carlo goal as well. That's a difficult shot to stop, and both of those going low blocker as well, which, as a coach, that's where you're telling kids to shoot all the time. With a screen, those are nearly impossible to stop. I don't think that Samsonov got the quality of work that Swayman did, but yeah, clearly the Bruins have the edge in net. But if you're going to rely on that every game, it's going to be a long series.
I agree. By the way, I never introduced you to those who might not know you. We started so quick. That's Carl Corazzini, former Bruin, current St. Mark's head coach, former BU captain. Whenever I do the Immaculate Grid and it's Bruins and Blackhawks, I always pick you. That's always my pick as the two teams. So it helps my score at the end with it being such a unique player for those two. So I always I send you it when I do it. I'm like, Bruins and Blackhawks, it's got to be Carl Corazzini. Nobody else.
Yeah, all 19 games. Yes, sure.
Hey, you know what? That's 19 more than most. That's 19 more than most.
No doubt.
But to me, I think Swayman's best sequence was early in the game. Toronto actually came out pretty good. Toronto got some real chances early on. Swayman stopped them. They were the better team for, I thought, the first 5 minutes. And, Toronto had some chances. I thought Swayman, stood up well. And now the question becomes this, and there's other things we can get to in this game, and we'll probably revisit this in a bit, but what do the Bruins do in game 2 for goalie? Do you stick with Swayman? Do you go back? Do you go to Olmark? I mean, what's your take on that?
You 100% have to go back to Swayman. I understand the platooning that they've done all year. You do the platooning so that someone can carry you in the playoffs. And where Swayman now is 4-0 against Toronto and clearly was on his game tonight, I think you have got to go back to him tonight to show your team and Swayman that he's the number one guy right now. And that's what I would do. But I don't know that that's what they do.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, again, you look at it this season, they've gone back and forth the whole season. Olmark, Swayman. I agree with you. I think Swayman was nails tonight. And on top of that, Swayman's been nails against Toronto all season. And you've got to go with that. To me, I think in game 2 at least, you stick with Swayman. Now, if he plays great again in game 2, do you stick with him for game 3 when the series shifts to Toronto? Like, Olmark is going to get in the series. Like, Linus Olmark is going to play in this series no matter what. So, to me, I think you stick with Swayman probably for game 2. But even if he has a great game in game 2, I do think there is the thought of going to game 3. By the way, I don't know if you can hear it. They're transitioning the ice to a basketball court for tomorrow's playoff game. So I just hear in the background like clank, clink, clank, just the stuff going around. So if you guys can hear it, I apologize. But I mean, I think I don't know what they'll do. I don't know what they will actually do. That's the thing, because all season they've gone back and forth. So it wouldn't surprise me if Olmark comes in for game 2.
If you're thinking about getting Olmark in the series, I think you put him in game 2. I think it's a dangerous game to play if you just try to insert him in a series at some point, just because you've gone with the platoon all year. Now, if you're going to continue with the platoon, do it now, right? Mm-hmm. Don't wait to get him in game 3, game 4. If Swayman goes out in game 2 and wins, you go right back to him again. But if you're going to continue with the platoon, you've got to do it in game 2.
That's the thing. That's the thing, and that's what they've done all year, and that's why it is like Swayman. This is kind of the dilemma. We've talked about this a lot. Like, okay, your game 1 starter comes out, has a great game. Swayman did have a great game tonight, even though Matthews should have had that one that hit the post. Now what do you do? I mean, again, it's a tough call because he was so good in game 1, but because we saw it last year. Linus Olmark was great in those first 4 games. I remember you and I sitting here going, do you put Swayman in for game 5? And they didn't, and it blew up in their face. And so I wonder if that motivates them this year to just go to Olmark in game 2.
I think last year there were some circumstances with Olmark being injured, and you could see as that series wore on that there was something clearly going on with him, and that forced you to go with Swayman. I again, in this instance, think that you need to have a number 1 goalie. And now you have the added benefit in that you have a 1A and a 1B. And if something were to pop up, either an injury or Swayman doesn't play well, you clearly go to Olmark. But if it's me, I'm going right back to Swayman. Give him the opportunity to win the net. He clearly was great tonight. Give him the opportunity to be great again on Monday evening. I am going with Swayman, and them having gone with him in game 1 to me means that that's their goalie that's going to take them to the Stanley Cup Finals. I would at this point I would ride him a little bit.
So would you ride him until he loses and then you switch back to Swayman? Is that how you would do it?
So I wouldn't necessarily ride him until he loses. I think that's difficult for his confidence. I think if he were to go out in a, be it Monday or a Wednesday on the road and he loses a 2-1 game where he makes 30 plus saves, I mean, it would for me, this is for me, and I don't get paid to coach the Bruins, which is probably a good thing for Bruins fans. But I would play him until his game fails him, and that is 3-4 goals against where it on 20-25 shots where it just doesn't look right, and he's letting up soft goals. But he didn't do that tonight. I mean, the goal against him was a breakdown and a backdoor open net. Nothing he can do about that. Everything else that he could, and some saves that he shouldn't make, he made those saves tonight.
Yeah, he did. He did. And I think this is sort of like it's a good problem to have, but you also don't want to mess this up, right? I think the Bruins really don't want to mess this up. Because as I said, the whole season they've gone Swayman Olmark. But Swayman's owned the Leafs. And I agree with you. I don't know if you can just bring Olmark in a series, like, oh, we're bringing him in for game 4. I think if as you said, if you're going to do the platoon, which is what they've done all year, you have to go Olmark in game. If you have to go Olmark in game 2, if you're going to stick to that, because again, we've talked about it a lot. Like, and I just mentioned it. If you play a goalie until he loses, as you said, that kind of stinks for confidence. You go out there, you lose, as you said, like a 2-1 game, a 3-2 game, make 32 saves, and you're out. Like, I don't think that's great either. So, it's new territory. No team has really ever done this before in the playoffs. So I think this is kind of like they're forging. This sounds cheesy, but they're forging a new frontier, so to speak.
Forging a new frontier, but I don't think it's the way to go.
I no career hockey people think this is the right way to go. It's different. It's other people who are like, no, this is a good thing. I like the tandem. I've liked it all year, and even sitting here now, just as the game just ended, I'm debating in my own head who I would go with in game 2.
So I like the tandem for the regular season because it gave the Bruins an opportunity to win every night, right? Like there are no more Martin Brodeurs that are playing 72 games in an 82 game regular season. Like, that's not a reality. So it gave the Bruins, whose roster wasn't as good as it's been in the past, an opportunity to win every night. And when the Bruins relied on that too much, when they were asking Olmark and Swayman to make 35, 40 plus saves a night, it became a lot on them. And so it gave them the opportunity to be the number 2 seed in the playoffs in the East. But I think in order to win a Stanley Cup, you need I think you need a number 1. Now, there are clearly teams like Vegas last year and right, like Pittsburgh, they had gone through 2 goalies, and Chicago had Antti Niemi, like, not clear number 1 guys. But I think on the by and large, teams win Stanley Cups with one goalie that has been their guy all year. And I just think it's a dangerous game to have people move in and out of the lineup. But that being said, if you're going to do it, you do it Monday, you get him in there right away, and you see what Olmark looks like. That's the only way I go to Linus Olmark in the series.
I like that idea. And I think that's what they've done. So it's like, I don't think people should be shocked if Linus Olmark is in for game 2. It's what they've done all year. To me, what would be shocking is if they rode Swayman the entire series, because that's just not what they've done. So, and I think as I said, after last season, I don't know. I don't know if you go back to that. But I've said this throughout the year. I think Swayman has the capabilities to handle a full playoff workload. Like, Linus Olmark has struggled with that the last couple of seasons. We haven't seen Swayman do that yet, and we still have not Swayman do that. We've not seen Swayman do that yet. By the way, it's one game. it's one game. But throughout his career,
I was just going to say, does it hurt him in the long run doing a platoon consistently throughout the year, where you don't give, even on a 60-40 percentage, someone the opportunity to be the number 1? So you get into the scenario where most teams don't go with a tandem. Did it hurt them last year? Will it hurt them again if they try to go with one guy in net the whole series? Because you haven't seen them do it.
Yeah, and it's like, do you run out of gas? Like, that's the other thing, is neither of these guys they're rested because they didn't play as many games as a typical goalie of their caliber. But at the same time, like, you're not equipped to handle potentially 20 or more games in a 2 to 3 month span, because you've been playing a certain way for an entire season. So I think the goalie thing is interesting. I want to get back to that in a bit. There's some other topics I want to get to. But first, Carl, we are presented by our good friends over at Prize Picks. Again, use promo code CLNS for up to $100 for a deposit. Prize Picks, it makes the game more fun. If you're feeling David Pastrnak scoring a bunch against the Leafs, didn't do a heck of a ton tonight, but has a good history against the Leafs. Go over to our friends at Prize Picks again and use that promo code CLNS. The other thing that stood out to me tonight, Carl, was the bottom six for the Bruins. And that started with Pat Maroon. I mean, what a way to start. Makes a really nice play on Beecher's eventual goal that kind of freed the puck up for Boquist. And then on top of that, puts, I think it was Lyubushkin, put Lyubushkin in the Bruins bench. What did you think of the bottom six? First of all, what do you think of Pat Maroon tonight?
Well, I mean, it's someone that knows how to play playoff hockey. He knows exactly what his role is in the lineup. He's got to win one-on-one battles, which he did, on Beecher's first goal. But I do think that Toronto, especially on their strong side pinches, was overly aggressive. Right? He understands that. He understands where the contact's coming from, makes the play off the wall to get to Boquist. So he had a nice game. Obviously didn't play a lot of minutes. I think at the end of the day played 8 minutes in the game. But anytime in a playoff series where you can get additional offense or secondary offense from your fourth line, that is a great way to start. And obviously I do think that Beecher will play a role in the series. You saw the confidence that Jim Montgomery had in him at the end of the first period with 10, 11 seconds left, taking the face-off in the defensive end. So I do think that he's going to play a factor, both taking face-offs, playing on the penalty kill, which will obviously be huge in a series like this against Marner and Matthews, and if Nylander comes back at some point. So nice to get offense from them. Would like to see the Bruins be a little bit more physical, a little bit more aggressive on their forecheck. That's me. Obviously, the game plan for the Bruins is to keep Toronto in front of them, right? You could see on the forecheck, both not just your fourth line, but consistently throughout the game. F1 was aggressive for the Bruins. F2 and 3 taking away the middle of the ice on top of Toronto, not wanting to give up odd man rushes, because if you give odd man rushes up against Toronto, they'll be in the back of the net all night. So, yeah, great job by the fourth line. Great job by the Bruins there, forecheck. Hope to see more of John Beecher in the series.
You've liked Beecher all year. I know, and it was whenever he scored that first goal, I thought of you. I'm like, man, Carl called this months ago. I like what Beecher and Boquist bring alongside Maroon. Obviously, Maroon is not the speedster that Beecher and Boquist are. But I think, as you said, what Maroon brings in playoff knowledge, physicality, he's good in the ozone. Like, I like what he's able to do, especially puck protection, things like that. I like that. And it's funny because people always compare Maroon and Ryan Reeves. Reeves can't do half of what Pat Maroon can do. So I think Maroon brings a lot more than, and Montgomery said that on Friday, Maroon brings a lot more than people give him credit for, and what he's able to do.
So two different games, to be fair, right? I think in possession with the puck in the offensive zone, Patrick Maroon has a more complete game. When you look at the way that Toronto forechecked tonight, which was really aggressive, really physical, especially in that first 5-6 minutes, both of the first and the third period, Ryan Reeves brings more to that game. So what Toronto did was they played a 2-on-2 with both their first two forwards overly aggressive, following the Bruins defenseman, and then being really physical, right? They look at it really did look like Toronto was trying to take Florida's game plan from them last year, which was, we are going to see if the Bruins can push back against our physicality. That Ryan Reeves does really well. He's a good enough skater, and that when he hits, he leaves an impact. Patrick Maroon can't do that. Like, he can hit, but there's not pace behind that. So different players, what the Bruins need to do in the offensive zone is possess the puck. And if you watch the game tonight, when they possess the puck, it needs to go low to high right away, because Toronto in the defensive zone didn't close out fast enough. And that was a big part of Brandon Carlo's goal, right? Like possession behind the net by Marchand to DeBrusk. DeBrusk right away from the goal line extended, goes out to Carlo, and you could see it all night from Toronto. Just not the ability or the want to close out. And Carlo, who's not a known goal scorer, was able to pick low corner. And that's what Patrick Maroon does really well. Below the goal line, possess the puck, really difficult to get it away from him. So, right, like if the Bruins can create more turnovers in the offensive zone off their forecheck, and he's a part of that, he can certainly make more plays than Ryan Reeves.
I agree. I agree. And it's interesting because, we're talking about the bottom six. I love the third line's play tonight on the forecheck. I loved Frederick, Geekie, Lauko. They had a really long sequence. I think it was in the third period that led to an eventual penalty that the Leafs took. Again, like I've been critical of Lauko this season. I think that there's some finishing issues and this and that. I thought he looked good tonight. I thought for what you wanted out of him, I thought he brought it. I thought Morgan Geekie was great. I thought just again as an F1 making hits, I like it. I like it. I think that's what you want that third line to be. They're not going to be a shutdown line per se, but they're going to chip it in deep. And I think, pack a punch and potentially get sustained zone time, which is what they did tonight.
Yeah.
And so I liked it. To me, like as I said to you, the difference tonight was goaltending and the bottom six. That was what it was for me.
Yeah, the Lauko shift there in the third was a huge momentum shift, right? Toronto had come out in that. Obviously, Toronto scores a minute and a half into the third period, is controlling pace of that third period, trying to give themselves the hope that they can potentially come back into the game. And then Lauko, Frederick, rather come out with that shift, extended zone time, 54 seconds, something like that, dominate, get a penalty drawn against Toronto. I assume that's them doing the 1 o'clock game time for the Celtics and Heat tomorrow.
They're hard at work. They are hard. If you guys could see what I'm seeing, the glass is almost gone. They're taking all of it down, and then I can't fully see in what that noise is, but they're going to work. I mean, they'll be working all night, so I'm not going to make fun of it.
I do think if the Bruins have the opportunity to move deep into the playoffs or even do a second round, I think that's where the scoring and the secondary scoring depth for the Bruins becomes a problem. I think that third and fourth lines, like you say with Lauko, the ability to finish, I think that is a problem. And right, like if you're going to get in at some point in this series, you're going to get into a transition game, right? Like you're not going to be able to put it in deep. You're not going to be able in Toronto to get the line matchups. That scares me a little bit when you get to Toronto and somehow Marner or Matthews, the way that they've constructed their lines, that they get matchups against Frederick, against Geekie, against Lauko, and they start to have success in transition. And the Bruins third and fourth lines played well tonight because they have last change, because they have those matchups against Toronto's third and fourth line, and that's not going to be a reality the rest of the series. And it's a reason why I think this is going to be a long series, where it's going to come down to the Bruins playing their structure versus, Toronto deciding to turn it on and be an offensive juggernaut that they can be. And again, when does Mitch Marner show up, and does Nylander get back into the lineup here?
Nylander's the big one. There's another area I think the Bruins won tonight by a long shot. Because I agree with you. I want to just say this for the record. We're talking about game one. This series is not over. The series isn't close to over. The series is going long. This is, it's just one game. And I think everyone learned their lesson last year again with Florida. But before we get into that matchup that the Bruins won, a quick word from our friends over at Prize Picks.
Match is over, but the biggest moments in college basketball tip off in the month of April. Be a part of the action on Prize Picks for both men's and women's college basketball. You can now win up to 100 times your money on Prize Picks with as little as 4 correct picks. You can turn $10 into $1,000 with basketball, hockey, and college basketball entries today on PrizePicks, America's #1 fantasy sports app. PrizePicks has something for every sports fan, from basketball and hockey to League of Legends and everything in between. You can pick LeBron, Caitlin Clark, Connor McDavid, and Jude Bellingham, all in the same entry. Want to play alongside some of PrizePicks' favorite players like Meek Mill and Sugar Sean O'Malley? You can now find community plays under the promos tab of the app to view entries from some of the biggest names in the PrizePicks community each week. Testing my skills on PrizePicks this season is the most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. PrizePicks is really simple to play. I can make my picks and submit my entry in less than 60 seconds. Quick withdrawals, easy gameplay, and a huge selection of players and stat types are what makes PrizePicks the #1 daily fantasy sports app. And with the Bruins season still in full swing, there are plenty of ways to participate in PrizePicks. This week, I'm selecting David Pastrnak for more than 3 goals and Charlie McAvoy for more than 4 assists. So download the PrizePicks app today and use code CLNS for a first deposit match of up to $100. Again, use code CLNS, that's CLNS, for a first deposit match of up to $100. PrizePicks. Pick more, pick less, it's that easy. And now, let's get back to the show.
That's our friend Connor Ryan. He is not here. He's down in the Bruins dressing room. I wish I could cut to him, be like, "Oh, Connor, what are you hearing down there?" But we're not going to do that. It's you and me, Evan Marinofsky, Carl Corazzini. I think an area where the Bruins won a lot on Saturday night was on D, and not just defensively. I thought head-to-head Bruins D versus Toronto D, Bruins won that by a lot. Maple Leafs had a really tough time moving the puck on their breakouts, especially in that first period. Really, they did not really have an answer for the Bruins' forecheck. I know they were kind of staying above pucks and forcing turnovers, and that's kind of what happened. But I also think the Bruins' defense had a great night. I thought Lindholm and Carlo together were dynamite. Just the way that they were aggressive at their own blue line, breaking up plays before they happened, closing on Toronto's forwards quick. And then I thought Grzelcyk and McAvoy had a good night. They played mainly against that Tavares line, whereas Lindholm and Carlo were tasked with Matthews. To me, I just think the Bruins defense was just so much better than the Leafs defense. Not a surprise, but I mean, again, I think, I don't know if the Leafs defense is going to figure it out in terms of cleanly moving the puck out of their own zone. I think that's going to be an issue going forward in the series for them. What do you think?
Yeah, and I think that was the whole game plan for the Bruins tonight, right? F1 coming, being aggressive, F2 and 3 sitting on top of Toronto's forwards. What you're forcing Toronto's defense to do is break the puck out themselves. Limit the opportunity of the Toronto forwards to get it and come 100, 150, 200 feet. And that was difficult for Toronto tonight on the back end. They don't have, right, like outside of Riley, they don't have puck movers. And so, yes, I do agree with that. That's going to be difficult for Toronto throughout the series because I can't imagine that Montgomery and the Bruins are going to change their forecheck throughout the 7-game series. I would assume they'll have to make some adjustments. The adjustments will be probably coming out the weak side. So what that looks like, right, like getting back to the puck with some urgency, going to your D-to-D partner, and then coming out the other side. That's something that Toronto's going to have to do. And then on the Bruins side, on defense, what they did really well was shutting down plays right before the defensive blue line, not allowing Toronto offense time and space. And I think that Brandon Carlo did a specifically good job of that all evening, right? Like, and anytime you get additional offense from anyone on the back end, but Carlo in particular, that's a great evening. But yeah, the ability of the Bruins defense to shut down plays at the defensive blue line was great tonight.
It was, and I think that's going to be a thing for them, going forward in this series. I think it's going to have to be. I want to get back to the goaltending in a second because there's been some comments out of the dressing room that are interesting. But first, we would be remiss if we didn't mention the power play. Yeah. Bruins get 2 power play goals tonight. I didn't think the power play looked incredible at times, but they did figure it out. Jake DeBrusk gets 2 goals. McAvoy with a really nice pass down low on that second one, and then DeBrusk with the shot from kind of the outside that Samsonov didn't really seem to see. on that first one. I think it's encouraging, and I think it hits at something I talked about a lot coming into this week, which is their PK is not great. You do have an opportunity here to get your power play going, or at least cash in a few more times than you normally would. And I think you saw that in game one. Does it continue to game two? I don't know, but I do think that in terms of the power play, what it's been, I thought it was pretty damn good tonight.
No, I thought they did a great job moving the puck, creating different lanes, opportunities for people outside of David Pastrnak to get shot opportunities. I think the one thing on Toronto's end, and you see that both 5-on-5 in zone play and then the 5-on-4, there's not a whole heck of a lot of urgency. You see on DeBrusk's goal, and I don't know who the defender was at the time, but not closing out on him, not getting in that dot lane. So you're going to have, if they continue to move the puck the way they did tonight on the power play, they're going to have a lot of opportunities to create scoring chances on the power play on every chance they get. On every power play they get, they're going to have opportunities for grade A scoring opportunities, just because it doesn't. You see teams in the National Hockey League, active sticks, closing up lanes, blocking shots. You just didn't see that from Toronto tonight. And the power play, whatever they did, like they made drastic changes to the power play, looking like they wanted to have two units that they would use for a minute at a time. And, anytime you can score two power play goals in a playoff hockey game, you're doing something right.
Yeah, and it's interesting, and I think it hits on another thing of, like, we've talked a little bit about the bottom six drawing some penalties. I think a weird, interesting thing in the series, and it was off the first face-off, was Domi going at Marchand and trying to get something started there. And credit to Marchand, he just kind of let it be, whatever. And it boiled over. I think it was was it the third period? I forget what period it was. It's in my notes somewhere. It was in the second. Domi comes down, slashes Marchand. I was surprised the refs caught it because it was kind of far away from the play. Marchand kind of went like this, like the old little hit my wrist. And refs caught it. Bruins score on that power play. So I am curious to see if Toronto's a bit more disciplined with their play in game two, to try to not let Boston get on the power play. But I agree with you. I like the idea of those two units. I kind of like that Marchand and McAvoy are on that second unit to kind of even them out a bit. They also have their line mates basically together, because you got Heinen with Zacha and Pastrnak, and then you've got Coyle with Marchand and DeBrusk on that second unit. So I like that it's kind of continuing the chemistry. And then you have Geeky and Maroon on each one. So I'm curious to see if it continues. Again, could it be one game? Yeah, but Toronto's PK is not great. So this could be a trend where, they're getting these power plays and cashing them in on it. So I don't know. I don't know if it continues or not, but it could. Never know. Long series, right?
You're going to continue with it for right now. I think the success anytime you're going to score two power play goals in the playoffs, they're going to go right back to the next game. Right? Like, I think
continue with that success. I think continue with the two units, but that success, that's the thing. So.
I think the goal tonight in the game was, I think the Bruins power play had been predictable, right? Usually in season, Marchand's the best in the world at getting pucks off the wall. He get the puck off the wall, it goes to McAvoy, it goes to Pastrnak. And then towards the end of the year, you're closing out on that, taking away that opportunity for Pastrnak to get the one-timer or his fake one-timer and then step to the middle. So you needed Toronto to think about different options here, and that's what the Bruins were trying to create. And they created options tonight, created a lot of scoring chances, and Toronto will have to come up with some sort of adjustment to what they're going to do, killing those penalties. But I think as long as the Bruins retrieve the puck, as long as they move the puck with pace, as long as they move and interchange bodies throughout the power play, I think the way that Toronto kills, they're going to create opportunities on every power play.
They will. The other thing I think, along with the power play getting going, is Jake DeBrusk. I think this is a big playoffs for him. He's on an expiring deal. His future's sort of unknown. He's done well against the Leafs in the past. To come out and get 2 goals in game one, I think, is a big tone setter for him. in terms of what he's going to end up doing in this series because, as we've said, when this series goes back to Toronto, they get the fortunate matchups. They get the last change. So are they going to try to shut down that Zacha line to the best of their ability? I don't love the guys that Toronto has to shut a team down. Like I don't know if Tavares, his line has typically been their shutdown line in the past. I don't know if they're going to do enough to fully limit Zacha's line, but I think when the series shifts back to Toronto, that Coyle line is going to be more important because if they go up against Matthews or I don't know, that Holmberg line, then I think you're going to have to activate DeBrusque 5-on-5 a little bit more. So that'll be interesting to watch as the series goes on. So the goaltending again, we talked about this at the start of the show. We'll continue with it now because we have some new comments.
Okay.
So the Bruins, according to Ty Anderson, who's down there right now, the Bruins are not tipping their hand when it comes to the Game 2 starter. That's no surprise. But Montgomery did admit that it's going to be hard to go away from Jeremy Swayman for Game 2. This isn't the point we talked about at the start. This is a tough call. Like, do you go to Ullmark in Game 2 or do you ride Swayman? I know you've said you'd want to probably ride Swayman at least for Game 2. This is where I think this is kind of where that intersection is, right? Like, what path do they choose? It's still a tough decision for me. Like, I think it's going to be tough for them over these next couple, over this next day. So to me, like, yeah, I don't know. Like, they've done it all year with the tandem. So I'm not opposed to Ullmark coming in for Game 2, but I would also understand Swayman staying in the net for Game 2 as well. I know that's an annoying fence-sitting take, but that's where we are right now. What do you think?
For me, and if you're asking me to make a decision tonight, I'm going with Swayman.
Head coach Carl Corazzini would go with Jeremy Swayman in Game 2. Yes,
I'm going with Jeremy Swayman, and I get that you have gone with the platoon all year, and I have said, if you're going to put Ullmark in, you put him in Game 2. But you've got to give, I believe, you have a confident goalie that was really good tonight. You've got to give him the opportunity to get really hot. Right? Like I do believe that if you win a Stanley Cup, you have a goalie. And I did see a comment like, oh, no one's ever done this before. But there's probably a reason no one's ever done it before. Right? Like and clearly you do have two really good goalies. I just want Jeremy Swayman or whoever had Ullmark started tonight and he had the same success. I'd be saying the same thing. Like I think they're both really good goalies, but I'm going with Jeremy Swayman until he proves that he cannot play. And I mean that it needs to look to me like he's lost confidence, that he is not making the saves that he's supposed to. You get 36 shots and you make 35 saves, you deserve to go back in the next game.
It's funny because coming in, I was pro them going every other game. But the more you look at Swayman's stats against the Leafs, I mean, again, Swayman has now given up, this is Brian DeFelice from WEEI. Swayman has now given up 5 goals in 4 games against the Leafs this year. Like, at some point, as great as and I like the tandem. I'm pro tandem. I want to see them do it. I want to see Ullmark in this series. You can't deny how good he's been. I think you kind of have to give him the opportunity to continue to play that out. And if he stinks in Game 2, then you go back to Ullmark in Game 3. I'm fine with that. But there is that part of me that's like, should you stick to the roots? Like I talked about this week on Bruins Beat of like, are we overthinking the goalie thing? Where it's just like they've done it all year, the tandem, just keep doing it. It's worked, got you here. Why not continue it? So like to me, and I hate being like this. Like I feel as a media person, I feel weird not having like a side that I'm very passionate about. If I was head coach of the Bruins, I'd probably stick with Swayman. I do. I'd probably stick with Swayman for Game 2. And I see where it goes from there. He was too good tonight. It's not like he had, 22 saves on 24 shots. Like he was the number one star here. I would say he was the number one star overall. That first bit, also that beginning of the third period where the Leafs really pressed, he made all but one, he let that one goal was not his fault, and he made a bunch of saves. So yeah, I think I stick with Swayman. And you see what happens.
And I know this is a bad way to think, but I think if you go with Swayman and say he loses, there's no second guessing, right? Like if you go with Ullmark and he doesn't perform and you lose, I think people kind of look at it and you're like, why didn't you just go with Swayman? He was really hot in that last game. And I think the way that you set it up and whoever had been the starter in tonight's game, I think you'd go. I really do believe you'd go with them until they prove that they can't play. And that not being and that looking like not making the saves that you're supposed to make.
I agree with you. I agree. You've talked me into it.
Okay, good.
Me into it.
That was my whole goal. I like to talk people into doing stuff. So there you go.
There it is. You convinced me. You won me over.
Nice.
That's Carl Corazzini 1, Evan Marinofsky 0.
Nice.
You're off to a hot start. It's funny though, as we look at this game, because I've said this all week. I've said this for a while. Game ones are overrated. It's the first game of a series. It's cool, nice to win them, but it's a very long series afterwards. That doesn't mean that you can't think differently about the series after a game one. I mean, there are trends tonight, I think, that, I mentioned like Toronto's defense having a tough time moving the puck out of their own zone. I don't think that magically is better by game two, unless the Bruins, just don't come out hot. Their forecheck isn't as good. There's not as much of a buzz for them. Like, if they continue to do what they did tonight, I don't see Toronto's defense magically becoming better and moving the puck out of their own zone. In terms of Toronto's offense, that'll click at some point. Like you mentioned Mitch Marner. At some point, you would think there will be chances. Matthews had a few chances tonight that were pretty good. Obviously, he hits the post. Swayman randomly kind of came out on that. So there's stuff like that. But is there anything that you're thinking differently about this series after just one game?
I think I came in thinking that it was going to be a 7-game series. And I knew that Toronto was inconsistent. It was just surprising that they were inconsistent within the game today. And they came out in that first 6 minutes of that first period and were dominant. They were physical, they were aggressive, and they let that one over-aggressive pinch by Edmondson get to them. And then they stopped playing until the last 2 minutes of the first period. And I think that was surprising. I think that was surprising to me that there was not enough pushback from Toronto. Like, you have an unbelievable offense, be aggressive, force turnovers, create time and space. They didn't do that tonight. Now, I do think when you move back to Toronto and Toronto has last change, they'll get some more offensive opportunities. They'll end up in the back of the net. I think I thought going into the series this was going to be a 7-game series. I come out thinking it's going to be 5 or 6, more likely 6. That Toronto's good enough to get 2 wins. I just, like you say, I don't see Toronto being able to create from the back end enough to get out of the zone, because regardless of what happens, whatever line change you get in Toronto, Montgomery's not going to change that forecheck. It's going to be the same. He's going to ask Toronto's defense to do more than they're capable of doing. And if they continue to turn over pucks, that's going to be a hard way for Toronto to win games. The one thing I would say on the Bruins end, and we've seen it through the course of the year, sometimes they become casual with the puck and they turn over pucks more than they need to. And if the Bruins turn over pucks against Tavares and Marner and Matthews, that's what could change the series. Is, well, I guess 2 things: do the Bruins turn over pucks, and do they take excessive penalties in any given game? And that would turn the tide. I thought 7 games. I'm going to go 6.
That's fair. That's fair. I came in kind of optimistic about the Bruins in this series. I had Bruins in 6. I mentioned a lot throughout the week of, the Bruins offense hasn't been great, but Toronto's defense and goaltending isn't great. Nothing tonight made me come off that. I still feel that way. Samsonov was not great. Their defense was not great. The Bruins found ways to score. Are they going to get goals from Beecher and Carlo and 2 power play goals every night? No, that is not going to happen. But you got it tonight. And One interesting thing that I saw was Tyler Bertuzzi. Bertuzzi's an interesting storyline in this series, given, he was on the Bruins last year. Very physical. Him and Domi, I think, are kind of with Matthews to do that. Crushed Carlo against the glass at one point down behind the Bruins net. I'm interested to see how Bertuzzi, what kind of force he puts in this series. Is he only going to be kind of a physical guy? Last year he led the Bruins in points in the playoffs. Like, I wonder when he starts to get going points, if he does, or if the Bruins are going to completely limit him to just being a guy that's going to try to get under their skin.
Yeah, tonight, all that he really produced was 5 hits, right? Well, one giveaway. There weren't any takeaways on his end, but that was everyone across the board for Toronto. There wasn't, because they weren't able to create in transition. It limited everyone's capabilities. If the Bruins are going to force them to dump pucks in and play in the O zone, it might be difficult for them. But Bertuzzi didn't give the same energy that he gave to the Bruins last year, and was a physical force at times, but didn't do enough to create offensive opportunities.
Carl, is it your birthday?
My birthday is in 19 minutes, Evan.
Oh, we got to stay on for your birthday.
Yeah, do we really?
Oh, my God.
Yeah.
We may have to.
Yeah.
We may have to. Fill the chat with happy birthday, Carls. That's what we need right now.
Yeah.
So we don't have to go till 12 a.m. Or maybe we will. But, I agree with you. I think that this was it was an interesting game in terms of, I honestly expected the Leafs to win this game. I thought the Leafs would win this one. I thought there's no way you can beat a team 5 straight times in a season. And I guess that's my one thing that changed. I told all my friends to take the Leafs, and the Bruins end up just kind of pummeling them. So maybe don't listen to me. My friends shouldn't listen to to those anymore for what I pick for each game. But overall as a whole, so one thing I want to touch on before we head out, Bruins top 6, Pastrnak, Marchand, Zacha, those guys. Outside of the power play, were not really on the score sheet at all. Wasn't the biggest game from them. I don't think that's a cause for concern. Obviously, if the bottom 6 didn't do what they did, we would be saying, "Whoa, where was David Pastrnak? Where was Marchand?" I think they had chances, just couldn't really convert. Curious if you saw anything with those top 6 guys at 5-on-5.
Well, I think obviously some power play time getting taken away from David Pastrnak is going to limit the offensive opportunities that he has.
Yeah.
I think you had the same concerns last year in the playoffs as well. Like, where was he? Does he create enough opportunities off the forecheck? No, right? Like, he's not. He drifts in and out of consistency with his play. Tonight wasn't his best game. I do see him getting better throughout the series, especially in game 2. I would think that he's a force and probably a main reason why they win that game. I think Marchand was what he consistently is. He is someone that possesses the puck, that plays with energy, creates for his teammates, was especially good on the power play. Did he create the 5-on-5 chances that you would like? No, but was certainly effective on the power play.
He was. So again, I mean, not much to hate from this game at all. Like, it was a good game. I mean, that's a good Bruins win. I think it's a tone setter for the series. Toronto's going to have to change a lot. I don't expect they move away from Samsonov, because who else are you putting in? Joseph Wall hasn't been consistent since the start of the second half. You also have Martin Jones. I don't think they're putting him in a playoff game. Like, that's why I think you're stuck with Samsonov. It's just, you got to be tighter defensively around him. And, do they revert to just clearing the puck out of their own zone, like on breakouts? Like, I don't know. Like, what has to change for Toronto? I feel like there's a lot there in the D zone that runs deep.
Yeah, so I would say number one, if you're a Bruins fan, you're really excited about this evening. I think for a handful of reasons. I think number one, you have a game plan. You were really structured. You stuck to that. I think number two, Jake DeBrusk, right? Like he is an X factor. He's an X factor in any given series just because he is so talented, but he's so inconsistent.
I know.
And when you
that's the perfect way to put it.
Yeah, but when you start a series with him having 3 points, that is great. That's great news for Bruins fans. Like, you need that secondary scoring. He is a secondary scorer. He was awesome tonight, right? So that, and then you have Swayman, who was, 35 saves is 35 saves. I think on Toronto's end, yeah, you've got to clean up your defensive end, both 5-on-5 and 5-on-4. You cannot give, for any team in the National Hockey League, you can't give them that much time and space. That's just not going to be a reality. And if you're watching tape and you're the Boston Bruins, you're going to play low to high the rest of the series. And all that means is below the goal line, you have possession of the puck, find your defenseman, change sides, and then create traffic at the net. Just Toronto just doesn't close out. They don't close out, and they don't have active sticks. And there was far too much time in the defense. And now that's something that you can clean up. That is an attention to detail thing that Toronto can go back, look at their tape, and next game make some sort of adjustment. That is a change I would make. Second change is every time, and I don't know if I obviously don't watch Toronto enough to know if this is consistent or not. Their strong side defenseman pinched on every opportunity, and that hurt them on the first goal for Beecher. I would be less aggressive there. Again, I don't watch them. I don't know why they consistently do that. I don't know if they're trying to force turnovers. But I would limit those pinches to, whatever it is, the percentage being 80-20 that you're gonna win that retrieval. I would make those two changes, see where that got me, be a little bit more conservative on that forecheck, be a little bit more staunch in the defensive end, and seeing if I can make the game a special teams game. And if I'm on the power play for Toronto, then I feel good about it.
Yeah, I agree. I think those are valid changes. I think, like, again, closing out in your own zone, that's not like that's just doing it. You got to step up and do it. A couple interesting quotes out of the room. I guess Jeremy Swayman told Hockey Night in Canada, when asked how he felt when he was told he was starting game one, he said it's about time. So that's an interesting quote from him. I've always gotten the vibe, and this isn't really based off anything, I just gotten the vibe that Swayman 100% would want the net all the time. He just has that personality where I think he just wants it, and he can do it. I think he can.
I think that's an interesting quote, because when you look at the Ullmark trade situation, whether whichever team that was going to potentially happen with around the trade deadline, I think Swayman said, no, we want him here. I want him to be here. So for him to come out and say it's about time, I think that's a really interesting quote. Like, what's actually going on there? Obviously, every professional athlete wants to, right? Like, for his situation, there's only one net. Every professional athlete wants to play and has that mentality to go out there and take a game. But I just think I don't think I've ever heard that quote coming out of a locker room from those two, right? Like the big hugs and all that. So he wants this, and that even makes it clearer to me, Evan, go back to him in game two.
It's fair. And it's interesting because there's always been a lot made about their relationship, and it's real. I don't think they fake it. Like, it's 100% real. But I think both guys want to be the guy. Like, at the end of the day, I think they both benefited. I mean, Linus Ullmark won a Vezina last year in part because he was able to split the net with Swayman, and that made him fresher. But when it comes to this time of year, like, I think they both want it. So again, and this also, again, if Swayman keeps succeeding and then Ullmark goes in at some point, he could be more motivated. I mean, Ullmark has looked like a completely different goalie since the trade deadline, and that stability was added to his career, and that he knew he wasn't getting traded. Another interesting quote is from Jake DeBrusk. Quote, "I didn't like my season. pretty disappointed, but now we're chasing the ultimate goal. I just think it's a matter of playing the right way. This time of year is always about staying even keeled. He was asked about his goal this postseason, and it's to win. So again, I mean, as you said, it's a hot start for him. 3 points, 2 goals. Like it is the ultimate way for him to start this postseason. And I think he knows what's at stake because again, whether it's the Bruins or another team, if he has a monster postseason, even if it is just 2 rounds and he's that good, you're getting a payday. Someone's paying you. So I think that's another thing.
He's right. I think this is so important for him in many ways, right? Like if he does have a good postseason, he's going right. Like you're 100% correct. He's going to get paid, and he's going to get paid for the potential. He's still a young kid that has a ceiling that he hasn't quite reached for whatever reason, right? Like you can't say that this is who he is. Like he's a 40 to 50 point guy on any year. That's what he showed us. But if he can tap into playing this way consistently, he's going to be a guy that can put up 60, 65 points. Like he has that skill set. He's just going to show it. And if he can do it here throughout the playoffs and maybe get the Bruins to a round that they're not capable of because he is that secondary scoring, he'll have a better bank account than the two of us for sure.
That's true. That's true. It is an interesting thing with him. I mean, he is 27. Yeah. He's been around a while, and you hit it earlier when you said he's got all this talent and he's very inconsistent. That's sort of been that's been him his whole time here. Like you always see it. You see the glimpses, like even tonight, right? Like a nice shot from, outside, identifies the screen, puts it right where Samsonov couldn't see it. And then, on the other one, it's just a kind of a great play in front. So like there's always that flash, and it's like, I need to see more of it before I'm like really biting on it. So DeBrusk, it's good. It's one game. It's good.
I think the one for him is the second goal. Like the first goal for him is not necessarily going to be a reality where you have the opportunity to walk off the half wall and hit that far side blocker. Like that's not necessarily part of his skill set. What he can be good at is he can be a net front present, and he's skilled enough to put those pucks home, but he doesn't consistently get to those areas, and he leaves you wanting more. And the same thing, right? Like he'll take a defenseman wide and get across goal mouth and score these goals and create those chances, but he doesn't use his speed enough. So tonight was so big for the Bruins because if he has confidence, he is a difference maker in this series. He's a difference maker in any series if he comes to play like he did tonight.
If they keep getting production out of him the way they did tonight, they win this series handily.
Oh yeah.
I think it also goes back to like, this is a series where your bottom 6 can score. Guys like Jake DeBrusk can get hot because Toronto doesn't have the horses to shut you down. That, to me, I think is what it comes down to. And again, you don't want to overreact from a game one, whether you're Toronto's side or Boston's side. But, like, I just don't see Toronto having the horses to shut down the Bruins. Will they win games in the series? Yes, of course they will. We will sit here after whether it's game 2, 3, 4, whatever it is, and the Bruins are going to lose a game or two. And that's okay. But I still just don't see Toronto having the horses to shut down the Bruins the way they need to win the series, at least.
And I think on my end, it was just the defensive urgency all the way around from Toronto. If that was your game one effort when you had to, because you did, you had more shots, you probably had more quality scoring chances. But when it came time to defend, you didn't do it. And that was concerning for me. And that would be what would be concerning for me if I'm a Toronto fan. Can I change that? Like, I think I can. Or like that's kind of an effort and urgency thing. But if that's what you brought to game one, does that change for the whole series? It can change for a game, but are you going to consistently do that night in, night out?
Well, it's the habits, right? Like, you either have it or you don't with stuff like that. By the way, again, to reiterate, this post-game show is brought to you by our friends over at Prize Picks. Use that promo code CLNS to get up to a $100 match on a deposit. Again, makes the games more fun. Pick. You feel like you have a good pulse on this series, why not go pick over at Prize Picks? Again, use that promo code CLNS. Have we missed on anything? Have we not talked about something in this game that stands out? Like, I feel like we've kind of hit on everything. We've hammered the goalies for we haven't been negative, but we've talked a lot about the goaltending. We've talked a lot about Russ, the power play, the bottom six. Is there anything I feel like, do you have any other thoughts from this game that you haven't gotten a chance to talk about?
Yeah, I think the only thing really that we've missed on is what truly is the status of Nylander. I think you look at what they've tried to do over the course of the last handful of games as they got prepared for the playoffs, is they separated all of those players. They had them on 3 separate lines. Does he come back? Is he healthy? If he's healthy and he's on that third line, regardless of where the matchup is, he creates a matchup problem on that third line just because he's such a talented player. And that's the only thing that we missed and that I'd be worried about as well, is when does he come back and how healthy is he?
I agree, because as we've seen a million times, you can completely change a playoff series with a guy just coming back of William Nylander's caliber. And I know Nylander struggled a bit in the last month of the season. I know he was sitting on 40 goals for a while, sitting right under 100 points for a while. But I agree with you. I think if Nylander comes back, it's a different series. And I think again, if they put him in the top 6, then he bolsters one of those lines. And I think if they put him on that third line, that's another guy you've got to worry about, right? Because then now you've got Andrew Peeke and Kevin Shattenkirk going up against William Nylander. And I think Peeke, I know it's one game and I know it's been a small sample size of the Bruins. I've liked what Peake's brought you. Physical, shutdown kind of guy. He can shut down those bottom 6 lines. He can kind of shut down, even a second line. I know he did it against Florida a couple of weeks ago against, Tkachuk and Bennett. But I think Peeke would end up being tasked with Nylander if and when Nylander returns in the series.
Yeah, and I think obviously Peake's my favorite player on the Bruins, in large part because I wore.
Is that true?
No, I wore number 52 for the Bruins.
Oh, that's right. You
for my
for a second.
For my very short stint. But yeah, I mean, whoever gets that matchup, regardless if Nylander struggled down the stretch of the year, he is a great player. He creates a matchup for the Maple Leafs on that third line, and that is a concern. Whoever you got up against them is going to have their hands full.
They will. We've touched on everything. We have hit every note, I feel like. We will be here after every game, chatting it up, talking, come and hang out, have a beer, chat with us. We're always open to it. So this has been fun. And you, Carl, your birthday's in 3 minutes.
I know.
So I'll let you go enjoy it in private, not in public like this.
Well, all I'm gonna do is climb into bed right now, Evan.
Well, go right to bed, as I imagine a lot of these viewers are also going to do. So that's game 1. Bruins win 5-1. Carl, this will be, as I said, this will be every game, and I'm glad we're back doing these. It was so fun last year, and it was so unfortunate when it ended because we were like, man, we can't wait until they play Toronto in the second round, and then we get to do. We'll have the Leafs fans in here. They were in it during Game 7, and then it never happened, And so now we get that. So I'm excited. I'm excited for this series and these next couple weeks.
No,
so.
anytime you get to be in a series with Canadian market, it is exciting. I always wish for a Canadian team to win the Stanley Cup if it's not the Bruins, because when a Canadian team is involved in the Stanley Cup Finals, it's hockey's so much better. So it's good to be playing Toronto and appreciate all of their fans tuning in tonight as well.
Agreed. We'll end it right here. Bruins win 5-1. You can catch us on Monday after Game 2, and make sure to go subscribe to the Bruins Ringside channel. And all you Bruins postgame listeners, have a great rest of your night.